Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I thought I would try something different. I'm going to make a couple of different wiffle ball spirals. I have two different sizes of wiffle balls. I have ones that are baseball and ones that are softball size. And I'm using a size small shirt and a size medium shirt. So the first one, I'm taking the baseball size wiffle ball and putting it down in the lower portion of the shirt. Then I'm just going to kind of gather the shirt around it with my hands. And while I'm holding the wiffle ball, I'm going to spiral the shirt. I'm going to use my other hand to make folds in the shirt. I like the look of using a wiffle ball to make tall, deep scrunches, so I thought, let's just try to do a spiral with it and see what happens. By the way, this is the size small shirt that I'm using the baseball size wiffle ball with. I think the softball size wiffle ball was just a little too large for this shirt. Once I have the shirt spiraled, I'm going to use some rubber bands to hold all the folds in place. Okay, so for the size medium shirt, I'm going to use the softball size wiffle ball. I've placed them both out here so you can kind of see a size comparison between the two. I'm going to do basically the same technique that I did with the size small shirt, except this time I'm going to put a rubber band down at the base of the wiffle ball. That's going to make the shirt a little tighter against this wiffle ball than it did on the size small shirt. Now I'm going to grab the wiffle ball and I'm going to spiral the shirt the same way that I did the other one. I'm also going to hold all the folds in place with some rubber bands. I'm going to go ahead and dye both of the shirts at the same time. So I've placed them on top of a rack and I have them side by side. The size small is on the left side and the size medium is on the right side. I'm going to ice dye them, so I'm going to use some plastic cutting boards that I got from the dollar store and have cut into strips to put around the outside to make myself an ice barrier. The silicone cake molds are a little too short for this design, so I'm using something a little taller. I'm using binder clips to hold the strips of plastic cutting board together. And I'm placing a binder clip both at the top and the bottom of the strips so that they don't come loose. So I'm going to start with the size small shirt, and I'm going to kind of divide the shirt into 4 sections without actually drawing lines. So in 2 of those sections across from each other, I'm going to apply charcoal gray from Dharma Trading Company. I'm taking the colors up on top of the wiffle ball just like they were part of the actual sections on the shirt. In one of the remaining sections, I'm using heads or teals from Dharma Trading Company. This was one of those colors that they put out special as like a muck color. I don't believe this color is still available though. And in the last section, I'm using Spicy Plum from Pro Chemical and Dye. I'm going to add a small sprinkle of soda ash over the top of the dye and then layer on the ice. Since I have pretty tall sides on the ice barrier, I'm going to go ahead and add on a fairly thick layer of ice. By the way, this is the only layer of ice that I added to either one of the shirts. I didn't come back and add a second layer. Okay, so for the size medium shirt, I'm going to use 5 different colors. So I'm really not drawing lines again, but I am going to divide the shirt into 5 sections this time. I'm starting with Medieval Brown from Die Spin. The next color I'm using is Who's the Moss from Dharma Trading Company, and that's also one of the special muck dye colors that they had for a little while earlier this year. I don't believe this one's still available either. Next, I'm using Brazil Nut from Dharma Trading Company, followed by Moss Green from Dharma, and I'm going to end with a color called Loden from Pro Chemical and Dye. I'm going to add soda ash to the top of this dye as well, and then I'm adding on a layer of ice. Then I'm going to set the shirts aside and allow all the ice to melt. I left the shirts for at least 24 hours after the ice melted, and this is what they looked like right before I began rinsing them. There's a little bit of undissolved dye left sitting on the shirt, but I didn't want to add a second layer of ice. I wanted to just kind of see what the shirts would look like with the thick layer of ice that I added. I started rinsing both of them in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. So let me explain a little bit more about the rinsing process. Procyon fiber reactive dyes need a couple of different things to bond properly with the fabric. One of them is soda ash to raise the pH, and the other one is heat to properly bond the dye to the fabric. During the rinsing process, I always start rinsing in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Once the soda ash is rinsed out of the shirt, that helps to reduce the pH of the fabric, and in turn it will help keep any of the excess dye that is rinsed out of the fabric during the rinsing process from redepositing someplace different on the shirt. It is possible, if you started rinsing in really hot water, for some of the excess dye that you are rinsing out of the shirt to bond back onto the shirt. That's pretty much what hot water irrigation is using really hot water to bond the dye to the fabric. You would have to have your hot water heater turned up pretty hot, but it is possible. And most of the time, it just kind of stains the shirt. So like if you were doing a shirt that had a lot of white and you wanted the white left on the shirt, using the colors that I'm using on this size small shirt, you would maybe have a staining of the teal color or some of the reddish color that I used. But once you rinse the shirt in cold water to get out the soda ash, the chance of the excess dye bonding with the fabric is drastically reduced. So after I've rinsed out the soda ash, I will either go ahead and start rinsing the shirt in hot water to rinse out the excess dye, or I'll untie the shirt first before I begin rinsing in hot. The order of this doesn't make a huge difference. Whenever I tie-dye, there's always excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric, either excess liquid dye or in this case, ice dye. Hot water is really good to flush that excess dye out of the fabric. If you don't see a whole lot of dye coming out of the fabric, you can just go ahead and rinse in really hot water until the water is almost clear. A lot of times though, instead of just continuing to rinse, I will run the sink full of really hot water and add a small splash of Blue Dawn dish detergent to the water and just allow the shirt to soak. Blue Dawn dish detergent is a pH neutral dish soap. It helps to lower the pH in case I somehow missed any of the soda ash in the rinsing process. Again, the lowered pH level will help to avoid some of the rebonding of that excess dye. When my sink full of water cools off, I continue changing it out until the water is almost clear. I usually rinse quite a few shirts out at the same time, and so if I have several shirts that are in the same color family, I will soak them in the same sink all at once. However, if I have a shirt that I'm intending to leave a lot of white on the shirt, I usually will soak it by itself. You'll notice that there are a few colors that are really difficult to rinse from a shirt, and one of those colors is blue. The soaking method is a great way to try to get the excess blue dye out of a shirt. Once the water is almost clear, either if I'm just rinsing it or if I've left the shirt soaked, I put the shirt along with some Dharma's textile detergent into my washing machine and wash it using a hot water cycle. The Dharma's textile detergent or Synthropol or some other type of textile detergent does basically the same thing as Blue Dawn. It helps to neutralize the pH and keep any of the excess dye that might get rinsed or washed out of the shirt from rebonding someplace different on the shirt. I know some tie-dyers use Blue Dawn dish detergent in their washing machine, but I personally do not do that. It's just a personal preference. I prefer to use textile detergent in my washing machine. And you need to follow the instructions for the textile detergent as well. It really doesn't take very much because it's a high sudsing detergent. It's not like using a regular laundry soap that you would normally use in your washing machine. Like I mentioned earlier, I normally rinse a whole bunch of shirts at the same time, so I usually just put them all in the washing machine, regardless of the colors, all at once. The only exception to this is if I'm doing a shirt that I'm really wanting to keep the majority of the shirt white. I'll usually wash it by itself or with some other shirts that I desire to keep mainly white. Then I personally just put my shirts into the dryer after they're finished. I usually don't use any kind of fabric softener, but I put the shirts into the dryer and I dry them like normal. I try to treat the shirts that I tie-dye the way I know most people who would be purchasing this shirt or who would be making the shirt would treat their shirts. I try not to baby them too much because most people honestly don't baby their clothes when they launder them. And quite frankly, I don't like to have to either. For the first couple washes after I've tied a new tie-dye, I either like to wash them with other tie-dye or by themselves, just to make sure if there's any stray dye that I didn't get out of the shirt, that it doesn't stain something else. Okay, so here's the size small that I used the baseball size wiffle ball on. And I really like the shirt, but I'm a little disappointed that the colors are not darker and more vibrant. And that's my fault. So I always leave the shirts at least 24 hours after all the ice is melted. However, it's kind of that season where the weather's been hot and cold and hot and cold, and my tie-dye space dropped below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So for the colors to be really nice and vibrant, one of the other components that they need is heat. You don't necessarily need to warm the shirts up or do anything drastic like that, but when you process the shirts, they need to be in a space that is at least 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And my shirts were not there. Now, in order to have fixed this situation, I could have either taken them out in the sunshine and allowed them to warm up out there, or I could have just left them longer. In this case, I could have left them an extra day or two and they would have been perfectly fine. I was going out of town though, and so I wanted to get the shirts rinsed out before I left. And so I just rushed them and went ahead and rinsed them out. I'm going ahead and showing you these shirts just kind of to let you know what not to do. I have people contact me all the time and ask, my colors aren't turning out really vibrant. What can I do to fix that? So I thought, you know what? This is a prime example and a prime teaching tool. So I'm just going to show the shirts and show where I messed up because, quite frankly, it's easy to do sometimes. You try to rush a shirt and you rinse it out too early and, it doesn't turn out exactly the way you want it to. I've mentioned before that shirts that don't turn out so great are sometimes some of the best teaching tools. So I believe in showing the good ones and the not so good ones. But I like the design on this shirt. Of course, the center of the spiral is just really not defined, but that was kind of the look that I was going for, or the desired effect that I was wanting on this shirt. I think right at the very center of the spiral, it almost looks like a snake's head curling up. It's kind of strange. I didn't notice that until just a few minutes ago. I do like the colors and I like the colors together, but obviously I wanted them at full vibrancy, not this more watered down look. Okay, so here's the size medium where I used the softball size wiffle ball. And the center of the spiral on this one is definitely not defined. It's very fuzzy, which I think is kind of a cool look because it gets more defined as it goes further out toward the top of the shirt. I think it would look better on a little bit larger shirt. This is a size medium, and so probably the baseball size wiffle ball would be best for this size shirt. I like the colors on this shirt too, but I have the same issue with this shirt. They're not quite as deep and dark as I wanted them to be. I really like all the color splits though in this green. I think it looks really cool. I do have one light band going through the shirt though, up toward the top, and I think that may be the Who's the Moss from Dharma. These shirts I think are good examples too of how some dye colors need a little bit warmer temperatures to get the most bright, vibrant color. Like turquoise is one of those colors. If you use a color that has turquoise in it, turquoise needs a temperature of at least 70 degrees, but warmer than 70 degrees is really great when you're using turquoise dye, especially if you want nice, vibrant color coming from it. Okay, so here they are side by side, and the larger wiffle ball obviously makes more of a muddled center to the spiral. I kind of wanted that cross between a spiral and a tall, deep scrunch look. So that's why I was using the wiffle ball right in the center. And it kind of gives that effect. You can really see it on the size medium more, where it's really indistinct in the middle and then the lines or the folds become more distinct and more defined as you go out further from the shirt. You can't see quite as much of that effect on the size small. It almost looks like I just kind of made a messy spiral and didn't take some time to define the very middle or the beginning part of the spiral. If you remember too, I did not put a rubber band at the base of the wiffle ball on the size small shirt, but I did on the size medium shirt. So that may have made a little bit of difference in the way the center of the spiral on the medium looks compared to the center of the spiral on the size small. Like I said, the size small just looks like it's a little messy. The size medium looks more blurred, and it looks like it was more intentional. I don't know, I kind of see some potential in this design. I might mess with it a little bit more using some larger size shirts and see what happens. And definitely I'm going to allow them to process longer because I really like the color combinations, but I want to have them at full vibrancy. So if you guys have enjoyed the information from this video, not necessarily the way the shirts look, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.